We live in a toxic world. We can't live in a bubble, but there's specific things that you can do. Number one, to avoid a lot of these toxins, right? By looking at what you put on your skin, look at what you have in your environment. You don't, instead of using artificial sprays or bug sprays or chemical fertilizers, all those things, there's natural solutions to that are non-toxic. And then learn to detox your body, because we've been toxic since we were in the womb. And, we've got to detox those heavy metals and all the chemicals that we're exposed to every day. And so everything from coffee enemas to sweating, so important to sweat every day, sauna, exercise, rebounding, biomat, all these things that can really help to open up those pathways.
You're listening to Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast, and I'm your hostess, Diane Kaiser, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, former pro soccer player, transformational leader, holistic healer, and life purpose coach, helping you and your business awaken to your full potential. We are a transformation tribe of visionaries empowering passion-quenching, heart-centered advice to wellness warrior leaders on self-love, nutrition, mindset, and divorcing perfectionism. Our mission is to help you laugh your way to a sexy belly, love your way to vitality, and live your life with purpose by sharing real talk and truth drops that will help you cleanse your body, heal your hormones, and ignite your life. Side effects of this podcast may include all-day energy, happy hormones, perfect poops, increased confidence, becoming your own best healer, and catching the self-love virus. There's currently no vaccination to protect you from this and no known cure. In most cases, listeners experience a strong desire to accept new challenges, ditch toxic people, follow their heart, and dance like no one's watching. If you experience moods happier than usual, live it unapologetically and share with your social media friends immediately.
Hello, warriors. Welcome back to another episode of Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast. Today, we are talking to one of the most beautiful sisters that I know on the topic of breast. You guys know I love talking about breast because of my own journey and my book, Breast. You can see it right here, Killer Breast, My Journey of Breast Implant Illness. Recently, I did a show with Dr. V, and now I'm having her on my show. So we're going to talk about breast cancer today. We're going to talk about early detection and how you can be an active role in your own body's signs, because your body's always speaking to you, always in the language of symptoms. But unfortunately, we have been taught that those symptoms are a curse and to shut them up and to silence them rather than explore what your body is trying to say. So we're going to get into it today on all these topics and more. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Véronique.
Thank you, Diane, for having me and sharing my message of hope with your audience.
It was a very, very inspiring message of hope. And I'll share this because the first time I heard of you, I was in Dominican Republic leading a yoga retreat. And I was listening to the Truth About Cancer docuseries. And I think that you were on the second set of series. And I heard you say you had 7 steps. There's 7 essential system that you had put together. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. So be sure to tune in to the entire show. And I saw the steps and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're the same person. She's just an older, more wise version of me, because you and I think so similarly. And it was so beautiful to see it. I was in my hotel room getting ready to teach yoga at like 7 in the morning. And I was listening to your episode because I'm so committed to learning more. And I was just like, oh, so I felt you come into me before I led the retreat. So I was like, I have to know this woman. I have to know this woman.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's a perfect timing, really. Whenever I do these shows, God always puts me in touch with the right people at the right time. And then the energy just gets sent out there. So in the last week, I've had 2 of my previous clients, or very dear friends of mine, say that they had been told that they had some kind of earlier stages of cancer, specifically breast cancer. And they asked for support, they asked for references, they asked for prayers. And of course, I sent them to you because you are a 2-time breast cancer conqueror. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, let's talk about your journey, because I think I also first learned about you too when my aunt died of breast cancer. And she actually died the second time, and she went through the chemo and the radiation. So I'll dedicate this podcast episode to her, Aunt Kathy, up there. Be with us right now. So tell us about your journey.
Well, my background is I'm a chiropractor by profession, and really what opened the cancer world to me was my father's diagnosis with pancreatic cancer way back in 1983. And it was one of those gut-wrenching, life-changing moments. The doctors gave him no hope, sent him home to die, gave him a 6-week life sentence, and he bought into it almost to the day. So that really showed me that traditional medicine did not have much to offer when it came to cancer. So I knew better as a chiropractor. I knew that the body's ability to heal was just amazing. And no internet back then. So I went to the library, started doing research, called a few cancer clinics that were few and far between back then, and realized that, there was something that could be done with people with cancer. For my dad, maybe it was too late, but I started applying these principles in my practice and started seeing amazing results. I mean, people were reversing cancer and MS and rheumatoid arthritis and all kinds of children's diseases. So I was really excited about being the wellness warrior, the way before all of this was so popular. You were talking like early 1980s. And then one day I'm in the shower. I was in practice, about 23 years, and was doing a breast exam, and that's not the right way to do it, by the way. But that's all I knew back then, and found a lump in my left breast. And, it was a moment that I'll never forget. And it changed the course of my life forever, personally and professionally. And I knew from that moment on that I had a journey ahead of me. And the gnawing question that I had was, I'm a wellness warrior. I'm Dr. V. I'm invincible. How could this happen to me, right? And had to go down that rabbit hole and realize that I was human and I was imperfect and I had missed some pieces of the puzzle. And, breast cancer came knocking on my door. It was there to teach me something.
What did it teach you? What was your biggest teacher in the torture?
The first time around, it was reliance on, really understanding how my body worked. That's when I really started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And that was, the 7 essential system. That was a download where I just said, okay, what do I need to do to really heal my body? And, I knew all these different things, but I felt scattered and I felt like I wasn't organized in my healing. And so I said, okay, let's just create a program here. And that's when I started numbering 1 through 7, and there it was. And so that was like my biggest takeaway and learning. I felt like my body was an experiment at the time.
Right.
That first time around. You can relate to that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly, almost verbatim how I created my book too. It was like, whoa, I thought I was invincible. What the heck is happening here? And then it was, oh, I have breast implants. Maybe that contributed to it. And so it was the same thing. It was like, I thought I knew better. And so it's like forgiving yourself for not knowing as much as you thought that you already knew enough of, and opening the door to humility, to going, oh, there's a whole other side to this that I haven't even stepped into, and celebrating that versus, beating yourself up for it.
Definitely. And, and I realized there was a lot of emotional work that still needed to be done.
That was my next question.
Yeah, definitely. And during that time, I did a lot of, work with different kinds of therapists. And one of them told me, she said, I think you've been sexually abused. And I said, no way. And, my parents were alcoholics. I can accept that, but never have I been sexually abused. So we'll just go home and think about it. And on my ride home, it was like the movie went on. I started feeling nauseous and dizzy, and I thought I was going to vomit. And then all of a sudden, I just started seeing the images. And I was hysterical. I mean, I got home, was boo-hooing, called the therapist, and she said, okay, just calm down and, call your mom, call your sisters, see if they know anything about it. And I was shocked when I called my mom. She was like silent on the phone. And then she finally said, how could you remember that? You were only 3 and 4 and 5 years old. So there was a convicted pedophile that was our neighbor. And we're talking like the late 50s. And the police went door to door in our neighborhood and warned the parents about this convicted pedophile. So, it had to be pretty bad to be convicted in the late 50s. And, he was my friend. He was the only one really paying attention to me, would play with me. And, we ended up going in his basement and stuff happened there. But I never knew about it until I went through that healing. And, it was one of those repressed memories that you hear about. And I never imagined that would happen to me. So the good news is, that came out, and it really helped me to understand that for most of my adult life, I lived the life of a wounded child living in an adult body, right? And that's why I had failed marriages, bad relationships, depression, all of that. But it was so healing to finally understand what that darkness was inside of me that I could finally let go of and heal.
Thank you for being a true courage warrior to share that, because I believe that listening to your body and giving it what it needs, but being curious enough to ask, that takes a lot of courage, because it's easier just to go the conventional route. It's easier just to say, woe is me, I got cancer, I'm a victim of something, which is why you don't call yourself a breast cancer victim. I love that. I love you for that. You're a conqueror. You chose this path to be, victorious for you, and turn the tide and say, oh, this is a sign. This is a wake-up call. It was an opportunity for healing. Instead of just being like, no. And I think that when I think about just doing the conventional pills and procedures and chemo and whatever that looks like, radiation, it's continuing to keep the trauma inside of you. So I would love you to share how you made the choice to do something more conventional, like the first and the second time. Did you do conventional the first time and then natural the second time, or a little bit of both? Or how did that work?
No, I never did anything. No chemo, no radiation, no surgery. I did completely 100% evidence-based natural medicine. And why did I choose that? Because I knew and I had seen the results of my patients who did conventional medicine and came to me as a last resort. And by then it was too late. I rarely saw anybody that had gone through conventional medicine that came out positive in the end. And again, it goes back to my belief in the body's ability to heal. If you give it what it needs, and you remove the trauma and the stress, then things happen. And now we know. I didn't know back then in the it was 2004 was my first healing journey. Didn't really understand much about epigenetics and nutrigenomics and how our thoughts influenced our healing so powerfully. I came to understand that, especially more so in my second healing journey. But there was just no doubt in my mind that I was going to prove to myself and to others that I could heal without going conventional.
You became your own hero and healer. I love that. So the second time, what do you perceive? I might hear people thinking, well, the first time clearly didn't work, so it came back the second time. For the poo-poo or naysayers out there,
Right.
Why did it come back the second time? What's your intuitive hit on that?
Well, so fast forward 9 years, and I'd been, I was known as the Breast Cancer Conqueror, I guess for about 5 years. And I was doing all the coaching, and I was a mad woman who was trying to save everybody on the planet who had breast cancer.
I have no idea what that feels like.
Right.
Trying to save everybody from breast illness.
Right. And I wasn't sleeping well. My hormones were off. I had cavitations, dental issues. I was stressed to the max, and I was taking on all this breast cancer energy.
Oh.
And I could feel it in my body. I knew I was sick. I could just feel it, but I kept pushing and pushing, burning the candle at both ends, like we hear so often, because we think we're invincible, right? But then, when I got that diagnosis again, I was not surprised. And I said, okay, this is a time for me to live my life in a way like I've never lived it before, and to never, ever go down that path again. And so I trained coaches, so I wouldn't do the coaching. I took time off and I really dove intensely into healing and to really understanding the science and the mechanism of cancer. Did a lot of emotional healing, more layers, dig deeper, understood the principles like of Dr. Joe Dispenza, you are the placebo, visualizing, meditating, calming down my nerve system, which I'd never had learned to do. I mean, I meditated, but I really didn't know what I was doing. Now I understand the science about real meditation by using things like heart math and heart rate variability and, really calming down the nerve system. So
yeah, that's so important, because I think, even myself as a yoga teacher I don't teach anymore. I use it as a tool now, but like at retreats I host and things, but I've been an avid yoga student since I was 20 and I'm 42 now. So I've been doing yoga for 22 years. And I think people check that off and they think, oh yeah, I meditate. I do yoga, so therefore I meditate. But really, it's really just because you do some breath work doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything for your central nervous system. There's so many layers to that. So it's a combination of the biology of belief that you can heal, and heart math and Joe Dispenza, and really carving out time to not attach your ego so much to that crazy busy woman that needs to save the world because she sees suffering. And I totally relate to that. And I know every woman listening to this will relate to that, unless you're a robot. Then you might not relate to that. So let's go deeper into, what brought you to create this breast cancer movement. I know that, like you just said, I can just imagine you have this feeling of responsibility that you need to save the older aspect of you. Like, I got to save my former self so that doesn't happen again. Got to go back and erase it so I can kind of forgive myself. There's a lot of empathy that goes into that. And there is some ego that goes into that too. So I'd love to hear it from you, because you're so much me and I'm so much you, and how Diane sees it anyway. What inspired you to bring all of this to the forefront?
I just felt like I had a message to share. And I learned so much about my healing journey that I knew that it could save lives. And, that's still my mission, saving lives one breast at a time. And so it's kind of like that fire inside of you. You just want to do it. And that's where I am. So here we are, like 9 years. Yeah, 9 years I've been doing this, and I never ever imagined in my wildest dreams I was supposed to. I sold my practice in 2010. I was supposed to be retired then. After practicing for 30 years, right? I'm there. Okay, now I can take a break. No.
Well, yeah, it's how can you take the break but still be engaged where your heart feels like you're in service still, so that it doesn't break you. I mean, you're not in practice anymore physically, but you're still leading retreats and everything, and you have your book and you have your breast friends. You're just doing it on a more calm and service-based way.
Yes. So I don't have brick and mortar building anymore. Everything I do is virtual, and my team and I have supported women in 57 countries so far. So I'm very proud of that message, and the fact that we've been able to support so many women. So
yeah, thank you for that work. Before we get into the 7 steps that you created solutions, I'd like to hear more about what you ended up doing, like as far as to detect the cancer. Did you do mammography? Did you do, and all the things that you did to collect the information to know that it was breast cancer? And then what were some of the things that you had determined first or second time? Because I know it's different probably each time, as far as like xenoestrogens and emotional trauma. I always say like toxins and trauma are 2 of the things that we need to focus on to self-heal. So I'd love to hear more about how you came to realize that the cancer came back. Like, what stage was it? Was it pretty advanced? And how did you overcome your fears that you weren't going to die?
Well, that's a lot of questions in one.
I know, just flow with it, girl, because I know we only have so much time. So whatever feels right.
Okay. Well, how did I know I had breast cancer again? Well, again, I felt a lump, second time. It was smaller than the first time, so that was good. And I had some blood work done, which supported the fact that I had breast cancer. Back then the test was called, it was ENOX2 protein, and it showed positive for breast cancer. And then I use thermography and ultrasound and bioenergetic testing. So all these things can, confirm that I did have breast cancer again. And so basically, I had already written my first book. I already had the 7 essential systems. So I said, okay, this is an opportunity for me to dive deeper and to expand on what I've already done and learn more. And so there was a lot of difference in technology in just 9 years from the first to the second journey. I had more access to IVs and testing. Like one of the tests that I use is called the grease test, or the RGCC test, which measures the circulating tumor cells in your bloodstream, and then they grow them in the lab, and then they test 50 different natural extracts or 50 different chemotherapy agents, or both, whatever you choose. And they see which agents are most effective against your cancer cells. So you know what to take, because there's a plethora of natural medicine out there that work effectively against cancer, but how do you know which ones are going to work for you? So when you see your chart and your results, you say, okay, vitamin C is really good, or poly-MVA, or artemisinin, or this, depending on the percentage of the amount of the substances killed. And so you can create your specific protocol that is very, very effective. So that was one of the tools that I used. And, measuring inflammatory markers, methylation, I finally learned about estrogen methylation pathways, how it's so important for you to break down your hormones properly. And I learned about genetic testing, which, I didn't know about before. And I saw all these genetic SNPs that I had that kept me from detoxing properly, from, breaking down my hormones, from creating vitamin D, absorbing vitamin C, B12, all these things. It's like, no wonder I developed breast cancer again.
Is that something that you help people do, or is that something they can get from a regular doctor, or how does that work?
Yeah, we provide that in our coaching program. We show them what they need to do to really understand, get to the root cause of what allowed the cancer to develop.
Yeah, because there's so many. Oh my gosh, it's a kind of like the women listening now. It's kind of like, well, I feel like I either might get breast cancer because it's in my family, or I've been diagnosed. Now what? And now what do I do? So I'd love to talk more about that and the 7 essential solutions that you put together. So, and to have enough time for solutions, because that's my favorite part. When I interviewed you for my non-toxic beauty summit, there was like all these notes I took and things that I didn't really know as far as dosage and frequencies of even using food as medicine. So how can we use food as medicine? Because it's your first one. I just blew the surprise.
Essential number 1, let food be your medicine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, your audience is very familiar with, food as medicine, and there's no one size fits all protocol. I mean, that is one thing I've learned. We're as individual as our fingerprints, and so your diet is going to vary. So there's testing for that. There's a nutrition genome test that you can take to see genetically what foods and supplements do you need to support your genetic weaknesses. But if you don't do that, basically, eat organic as much as possible. 80% raw, lots of vegetables, protein. I believe protein is very important, but clean, all of that. And, minimal amount. You don't need a lot of protein every day. And lots of, seeds and nuts that have been sprouted. It's just good food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the average American now is eating the SAD diet and not thinking anything of it, and are being told that cancer is just genetic and it has nothing to do with food, but it has so much to do with food. How much do you think nutrition attributes to people getting cancer or health in general?
Well, I don't know that I could give a percentage to it, but it's a very, very high percentage for sure. Because if you just look at the amount of sugar that's in the diet, and we know sugar feeds cancer and turns on cancer pathways, that in itself is a big, big cause.
Yeah, I just don't feel good when I eat cancer, when I eat sugar, my body just does not do well with much. And that's good when your body talks to you like that. Let's talk about toxic exposure, because many people, all of us, have been taught exercise, diet. No one in the conventional medicine space is talking about detox. So how do you go into that related to cancer, reducing your toxic exposure? And why is that so important?
Yeah, we live in a toxic world. We can't live in a bubble, but there's specific things that you can do. Number one, to avoid a lot of these toxins, right? By looking at what you put on your skin, look at what you have in your environment. You don't, instead of using artificial sprays or bug sprays or chemical fertilizers, all those things, there's natural solutions to that are non-toxic. And then learn to detox your body, because we've been toxic since we were in the womb. And, we've got to detox those heavy metals and all the chemicals that we're exposed to every day. And so everything from coffee enemas to sweating, so important to sweat every day, sauna, exercise, rebounding, biomat, all these things that can really help to open up those pathways.
Yeah, people forget that our body needs to drain in order to properly detox too. So a lot of people, I talk about this when I lead my detoxes all the time. It's like, guys, we can't forget about drainage, because the toxins need to have an exit door to leave. Mm-hmm. And a big one is our breath. And so a lot of people have been masked the last year and a half, and they're having to breathe back in all this toxins. And I don't know, Dr. V, do you suspect what I suspect? Like in the next couple of years? Yeah. Yeah.
And matter of fact, I just read something this morning about children wearing masks, and they analyzed the masks and saw, it was a list of like 15 different types of pathogenic bacteria. Everything from meningitis to strep to, viruses, all these different things. And they were just right there. Yeah.
And kids don't know they don't clean this stuff up. They'll go roll around in the dirt for all they care. So I think it'll affect kids pretty hard. So I think we're looking at a future of more cancer diagnosis than we've ever seen because of that alone. Yeah. Let's talk about energy, which is number 3. Why is balancing your energy so important as one of the top 7 essentials?
So we are energetic beings, right? We're 1 billionth physical matter. The rest is all energy. So, how do we balance that energy? Think of your body like one big battery. There's electrical systems that are running through it. There's bioenergy that's running through it. There's light energy, there's hormones, there's all these things. So how do you keep that in balance? Chiropractic is extremely important, because that really helps to support the master control system of the brain and the nerve system. Everything in your body is controlled by your nerve system. And so if there's, misalignments in the spine, that can affect that communication. Then there's acupuncture, there's massage, exercise is so important to keep that into balance. Sleep, proper sleep. If we don't get restorative sleep, our energy is going to be off. And then a key for number 3 is balancing your hormones and understanding how to do that. Because if our hormones are not balanced, if we're estrogen dominant, or if we have problems metabolizing our hormones, then that can lead to problems with your health and cancer.
I have something to say about that too. To pull back a curtain of my practice, I'm like you, Dr. V, when I went through this and I was saving the world the next year in the middle of 3 surgeries in 2018. I had breast implant illness, then I removed my breast implants, then I had ruptured my Achilles tendon 6 weeks after my surgery. And then I had to have a second surgery on my foot because that got infected. So my body was just like, can we catch up from the last one? And then of course I was still adding stuff on top of the stuff. I hadn't healed from the last thing. So that was a nice lesson. And I ruptured my Achilles tendon the day after I wrote the book deal. So it's like, God was like, no, you're going to sit down. And I know you better. You're so funny, but you're so right. Mm-hmm. And that was the year too. I felt just like what you felt, which was trying to save everybody else, because I felt like I had this duty to save everybody. And that's when I got hit pretty hard and realized that I needed to give myself the energy that I needed first. And that's what we're taught, is we're taught that put yourself last. That makes you the warrior, the savior, and it makes you worthy. And unless you give yourself away and put yourself last, you're not going to be loved and thanked for the work that you do. So you better put yourself last. That's what I see so much in breast cancer with women too. That's how my aunt, we never know why people die or pass on, even when they're alive and they pass on and disassociate. But she was definitely one. She was a nurse. She was giving herself away so much as the nurse lead. And you could always see that she was carrying a lot of emotional trauma with her too, which is what we'll talk about next. But what I want to say about the hormones and metabolism and methylation and clearing estrogen, every woman that I've seen in the last year, especially since COVID started, their hormones are just in the tank. I mean, it's across the board. It wasn't like that before, but now it's just across the board. Cortisol, testosterone, progesterone, a lot of estrogen dominance. And that's what Dr. V is saying here, that if you don't get that under control and balance your hormones, not just with hormones on the outside, because you can't just balance hormones with hormones, but understanding why you're estrogen dominant, where that's coming from, the toxins she's talking about. And then looking at, if you're not clearing estrogen, it's just going to keep recirculating and coming back. And that could be a big leading factor to why, cancer starts. And it takes like a long time, right? I mean, I've heard it takes 7 years to get a proper diagnosis. Is that about right with all kinds of cancer?
Anywhere, from 5 to 10 years it takes for the, tumor to finally show its head. But, going back to the estrogen, I want to be really clear on this message to women. Your hormones do not cause cancer. The conventional medicine has vilified our hormones and told women, you've got a ER positive cancer, so we have to shut off that hormone because that's what's driving the cancer. That is not what is driving the cancer. We have to look at your chemical estrogen exposures from the environment, from what you're putting on your skin. You have to look at how your liver is filtering. And do you have the genetic weakness where you can't metabolize your hormones properly? There's ways to support that. So, your hormones do not cause cancer. We need our hormones for our brain health, our bone health, our cardiac health, the immune system, all of those things. And when you shut those off, and it creates other cancers. I mean, tamoxifen, for example, is classified as a class 2 carcinogen by the World Health Organization and the American Cancer Society. So, it just doesn't make sense to me that they're writing a prescription for a cancer-causing drug to a woman who's trying to prevent a recurrence from breast cancer.
Oh God, this has happened to many, many women in my family, many clients that we've worked with, and they get like a stage 0 or a 1 diagnosis. And that's when I jump in and go, hey, give them your information or some of the things that I've written about, and people that I've worked with that had cancer that were on tamoxifen, and they're afraid to get off of it. I mean, there's so much fear behind the pills that so when somebody gets stage 0 or 1, instead of taking tamoxifen, it was just the advice: read your book and do the 7 essential steps. Like, what is your thoughts on? You just mentioned your thoughts, but the women maybe even a second stage, because they're afraid to get it again.
Right. So support your hormone pathways. I mean, things like DIM, calcium D-glucarate, flaxseed, making sure your liver's healthy, coffee enemas, watching your exposure, doing saliva testing to see if you're estrogen dominant, because even if your estrogen is low, you could still be estrogen dominant if you don't have enough progesterone. Are your adrenal glands burnt out? Are you pumping too much cortisol? I mean, there's so many factors in that.
What do you think about women who remove their breasts because they have either aggressive or just it's common in their family to have breast cancer?
Well, if they have, you're talking about like preventative mastectomy?
Yeah, as a preventative, like they've never been diagnosed, but they've had a mom or a grandma or aunt, or it's in the family that they've had really, I'll air quote this because I don't know them. So, and every situation is different, but I'll air quote aggressive, rare types of cancers. And so there's some doctors that are prescribing prevention and let's just remove all of your breast tissue. And many of them replace that breast tissue with breast implants. And I'm just going, this is where both you and I come in, right? And say, hold on a second, let's here's our books.
And they often recommend hysterectomies as well.
Right.
And so, you're going down a path that your life will never be the same, and you're going to age at very rapidly. Unfortunately, it's sad to say, but cutting off your breast does not prevent breast cancer. There's other places that cancer can show up, and I've known many clients who have a positive BRCA gene that had breast cancer, but they're 5 years out now, and they're doing well because they got to the root cause. And remember that our genes and our DNA is not our destiny. It's how you trigger them. So you can have a diabetic gene, you can have a BRCA gene, you can have a heart disease gene, but they may never be triggered if you watch your lifestyle and your eating habits and you follow the 7 essentials.
Yeah. Is there ever a time where removing your breast, like, have you ever seen a case where it did make sense for somebody to remove their breasts as a preventive measure?
As a preventative? No.
Wow.
No, it does get to a point where if they have breast cancer and the tumor is large and progressing and, it's such a toxic load, there are times when you have to look at surgery as an option because unfortunately, sometimes women wait too long. They're so afraid and they're in denial that they let these horrible cancers take over their breast.
I have a question. I think it's important for my audience to hear too. So, we have these women who remove their tissues because they have breast cancer and then they replace them with breast implants. What is your take on that? Your experience?
Oh, well, I've seen so much suffering and so much regret. And I just recommend to our clients, wait at least 5 years. Give your body the chance to heal from breast cancer, become healthy, create vibrant health, and in 5 years from now, revisit that situation. But I don't recommend, as you know all the reasons why. You're jumping right back into the frying pan with implants, creating more dis-ease in your body and potential problems for cancer again.
Yeah, I mean, I just surmise that some women have a lot of their breast tissue removed, so there's this big weight of insecurity of not feeling like a woman anymore. So what's your advice on that?
There's a quote from, and I don't remember where I got this on a website somewhere, but it was a husband talking to his wife. And he said, I don't care what they take from you, as long as I can still see your face, or as long as I can still look into your eyes, or something like that. These things don't make up who we are. You preach that all the time, and I'm so on the same page. It's a piece of tissue. It'd be like a hand or whatever. It doesn't change who you are inside. And, if you have that insecurity that you've got to have these perfect breasts to feel whole and happy, then you need to look a little bit deeper into why you feel that way.
Which is number 4, heal your emotional wounds.
Yeah. Actually, if I were to start over, I'd put that one as number 1.
Right, right.
80% of the healing occurs between your ears and in your heart. And, there's so much stuff that goes into number 4, everything from childhood to our present day relationships with ourselves, relationships with our creator. There's so much that goes into that. And I see it time and time again, women who don't take the time to calm down their nerve system, take time for themselves every day. They still continue their type A personality, lives and jobs. They don't do well.
Yeah, I can self-admit to that sometimes too. But ever since I've healed and I don't think it's ever all the way healed. I think that there's always things that just pop up, and it's just how we respond to them. I think people think that they can 100% heal all of their emotional trauma, but it's a part of us too. So I think that it's to be celebrated when it does show up, to say, oh, thank you for trying to protect me, but remember, we're over that now, and it's okay. So people put that perfectionistic prison inside of their mind too, that they need to be completely, like that thought needs to be gone all the way, and that memory needs to be gone all the way, but it won't. It's a part of our journey. So I think that's another big piece to remind us of as well. And then the next one is to embrace biological dentistry. And that's such a big one too. It's like they say 75% of chronic illness begins in your mouth. That's what Dr. Jerry Curley told us said on the Non-Toxic Beauty Summit. And I was like, it's that high. So we've got all these high numbers. So what is your take on that?
Oh yeah, women with breast cancer or women with gum disease are twice as likely to develop breast cancer. Their chance is 50% higher to develop breast cancer. So everything from, the amalgams, the silver fillings, that are full of mercury that you have in your mouth. I mean, those are toxic. Then you look at the root canals that are, dripping toxins into the blood, because no matter how clean or aseptic they try to make it, it's a dead organ in your body. It's like having a dead appendix or a dead gallbladder. It's toxic. And then you look at how your teeth are connected to your acupuncture meridian system and connects all the organs. So guess what? I mean, we see this all the time. And my personal experience, both times, bottom left, top left, connected to the left breast, I had, some dental problems on those teeth, and, cavitations. And then I had an autoimmune issue on one of the teeth up there. So there's always a correlation. And we see that on thermograms. We see the heat and the inflammation in the mouth, and specifically more so on the side of the breast tumor. And so there's such a deep correlation. So make sure you work with a certified biological dentist that can help you.
Oh, Dr. V, you're wrong. They took off the root cause docuseries for documentary on Amazon. So
right.
Whatever it was, Netflix.
Must have been quackery.
What?
Must have been quackery, right?
Yeah. You're just lying. You're just trying to get money from sick people. That was so sad when they had that movie come out, and my mind was blown. And that's when I started researching, oral cavitations and how it can contribute, because you guys are going to see a lot of things out there that are going to negate and shame us for, like you said, being quacks, but it's such a big part of it. And also the trauma aspect plus oral cavitations. One of the gals that we work with who had MS, she's in a wheelchair for over 10 years, and no one had ever touched her emotional trauma. Similar story to yours, happened at the age of like 12. And she never dealt with it. And once we started bringing in the detox and work with her emotional trauma, rewrote the story and freed herself from, forgiving herself for not knowing better, she got out of a wheelchair and her MS reversed.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so amazing. The body wants to heal. We just have to get out of its way. And also what that means is also getting out of the way is to stop thinking that what else out there, what they're telling you out there is truth. And the pill is the best solution. If your intuition and power to heal is your best bet at healing yourself. And of course, with the help of other practitioners too. So coming down the home stretch, let's talk about the last couple here. I love number 6. And then number 7, we'll get out your breast friend. So number 6 is repairing with therapeutic plants. I love this one because it's plant power. So how can we use plants?
Well, there's so many, I pride my book. There's over 700 references to published studies in this book on evidence-based natural medicine. And so, we could spend a whole day just talking about number 6, but, real briefly, if you keep your vitamin D levels optimal, that reduces your breast cancer risk by 83%, just that alone. And then when you start adding things like curcumin and medicinal mushrooms and wormwood and, vitamin C and, there's hundreds of different protocols that work effectively against breast cancer. Concentration of blueberries, the nutrient in blueberries, kills breast cancer cells and breast cancer stem cells. So, there's so much power in nature and in plants. So
power plants. I think I see a power plant and I'm like, oh, it's toxic energy, that we do to produce energy for homes. But power plants are the opposite of this. And there's always a spectrum where it's like light and shadow of the same term. And power plants are such a big part of it. And not enough. It's like 10% of the population gets enough fiber. It's probably less than that now since COVID. But last I researched, that was about 5 years ago, which is really sad. So power plants, you guys, get her book because she talks about that. I'm sure you have some recipes and stuff in there as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you cover it all. Okay, let's talk about my breast friend. I don't have mine. My little breast friend is in my Sedona house. I'm in Phoenix when I'm recording this now. But I met Dr. V at one of our masterminds, and I saw this and I thought, okay, we have to do something on this. Let's talk about what this is, because there's a prevention. This is for prevention. And I'll share just a really quick story. When I went to my OBGYN about 5 or 6 years ago, he was doing my exam, my breast exam. And he said, oh, you don't have to worry about this anymore. You don't have to self-exam anymore. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what we found is that a lot of the women patients were just becoming hypochondriatic, and they were finding things and they were freaking out, and they were coming to us and they were scattered and they were frantic. So just don't worry about it. We'll just do it for you. And I was like, but you just told me you're going to see me now every 2 years instead of every year. So me not feeling my breast could actually mean that it could get worse very quickly. I don't like this. So enter Dr. V with the completely opposite solution and how you can detect your breasts to know what things might be cancerous and what things might be other things that are not as worrisome, but nevertheless, still something to be considered.
So to give you an idea, so the average size lump that a woman finds when she's not trained in how to do a proper breast exam is the size of a ping pong ball. As you become more proficient, you can find something as small as a pea. And that's what my breast friend model. So this model was created by the Mammacare Foundation, and this is the gold standard for training doctors and nurses on how to find lumps in women's breasts. So for 30 years, this model has been used to train thousands of doctors. And so the company asked me to, be a co-founder in creating My Breast Friend so that we could make this training available to women. So now, in the privacy of your home, you get to use this model to find out what a lump feels like and how to do the breast exam and where to palpate your breast, because some women think, well, I'm just going to do the breast, but you really have to go up into the collarbone, into the armpit, underneath. And so there's a whole system that goes along with this model. There's an instructional video, there's a little booklet, but you started off about your doctor telling you, come back in 2 years for an exam. I'll do it for you. There's something called interval cancers where women go in for a mammogram, and by year 2 they go in for their second mammogram, and in between cancer has developed. Now, if a woman has the ability to scan her breast every month, then she has the potential of finding something when it's much smaller than when it's much bigger and out of control. So feel your breasts. This is a whole training. Empower yourself. Don't be afraid to touch your body. I mean, there's so many studies that we can get into about mammograms and ultrasounds and thermograms and how all those can be beneficial, but ultimately, you get to know the geography of your breast tissue. And when you feel a change, that's when, the light bulb goes off and you get checked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just because your doctor says something does not mean that it is the gold standard or the God standard.
Right.
Like say it's, they're just trained a completely different way. And it's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that their system is more about saving you versus you saving yourself. And remember that hospitals are in the business to make money, not in the business to really make health. It doesn't mean that everybody working in it is that way, but I think that we all kind of get that are listening to this podcast.
Right.
So we're going to do a separate webinar/podcast on this topic, right? You and I on the breast.
Yes, definitely. And we'll give women an opportunity. I'm going to go through 7 different ways to detect a lump in your breast tissue. And then there'll be an opportunity to get a discount on the purchase of My Breast Friend. You can go to mybreastfriend.com to learn more. You can go to breastcancerconqueror.com to learn more about healing and preventing breast cancer naturally. And we're here to support you.
I can't wait because I have lots of questions. I still have lots of lumps in my breasts. And I'm like, do I have them today? from getting fat transfer, which I talked about on your show that I don't recommend it. I'm just like you. I say, don't get fat transfer when you first get your breast implants removed. Give your body time to heal. I did it the wrong way the first time, just like you did it the wrong, well, air quotes, the wrong way. We're advising women not to do what we did kind of thing. Right. And I still have like fibrocystic breasts. They're nowhere near as bad as they were because I've been working on myself, like serapeptase and PRP, and can't wait to hear more about what you have on that too, because I do have a lot of women who have done fat transfer that follow me that are wondering, okay, well, now what do I do? What did I do? How do I fix this? So that'll be a great thing that we can get into My Breast Friend. And you guys, you can get it now. So you can get it now, or you can wait till we do the discount on the podcast that we'll do next /webinar that we'll do on how to detect on your own. Thank you so much, Dr. V. Any final parting words?
Parting words of wisdom. If you've been diagnosed and especially recently diagnosed, you have time. Don't rush into the conveyor belt treatment, having to do this and this so quickly. Give yourself time to just really accept the diagnosis and do the research and figure out which path you want to make. Create a plan, assemble your healing team, and don't jump into it because you're frantic and afraid.
I think we would all agree that our best choices are not made through fear, but rather through faith and in time. So beautiful parting words. Thank you, Dr. V. We'll see you on the next show, where we will talk about how to use your breast friend and how to listen to your body and what to do when you do find lumps, and making choices from a higher perspective of consciousness rather than being critical and insecure and afraid. Again, this is Diane Kaiser of Cleanse Heal Ignite podcast. Thank you again for being here. And if this inspired you, as it obviously should with this topic that's so heavy for so many women, one of the number one causes of cancer among women, please share it with your sisters, because we all need to be our own best breast friend, but we also have to have the right tools to learn how to become physically our own breast friend as well. Thanks again, Dr. B.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If this episode really tugged at your soul and you're ready to have your personal breakthrough, we would love to have a heart-to-heart with you to get you crystal clear on 3 things. What do you want? What's standing in your way? And how do we get you to your soul goal in the fastest time possible? Visit my site, dianekaiser.com/call to schedule your free 1-hour connection session with one of our warriors to map out exactly how you want to look, feel, and live. We've helped thousands of women warriors just like you all around the world free themselves from the symptoms and suffering they never thought possible. And you just might be our next success story. Talk soon.